everyone. We are thrilled. Actually, it's bittersweet today, I must admit, because this is our last episode of season 2. But to uplift our spirits, we have the incredible, the charming, the cat-loving Vinay Patel.
Hello. I'll take that. That's a good intro.
Right. So Vinay, how many cats do you have? We were having a whole conversation before about cats, just so people don't think I'm just randomly saying that you are a lover of cats.
I'm pretty sure anyone watching this will already know, but if not, I have 2 cats and currently in a situation with a 3rd cat trying to enter my life, but me very much not wanting this cat.
I love
yeah.
a situationship with a cat.
Yeah, I mean, it's around, like literally the reason I'm turning my head now is just my 2 cats are looking at this other cat out the window right now. Like there's a whole drama happening just here. Wow. So like, but for another time, like this is what theatre is something amazing is happening just off stage. And,
right.
I can just invoke it.
You can see where you get your inspiration now. These cats keep you entertained. Yeah. And it's so funny because we were just talking just before we actually started recording, and your cats were entertaining all of us actually. Like, you know what I mean? We were having this whole conversation about just the increase of people owning cats during the pandemic, and we definitely think that's gone up, or owning any pets at this point, which I think there's loads of pets that are very, very happy right now.
Oh, there's a literal shortage of cat pouch food. It was like BBC front page news. And I was like, what has happened to the world? Like...
It was insane, right? I remember going, I mean, I don't own any pets, but just the experience of going into a grocery store and seeing empty shelves, I will never, ever forget that. Like it was insane. Yeah. Insane.
I love that though. I love that amongst all the tissue roll hoarding, somebody was like, and for my cat. Like that's really lovely. I'm so here for it.
I mean, everyone knows this is a country that loves its animals sometimes to a slightly scary degree. Sometimes more than its people. So
Exactly that. So Vinay, let's do this properly because I really want to just dive in. Everyone knows I love just diving in the deep end. However, I need to do a proper introduction for you. So here we go. Vinay's debut play, True Brits, which I actually love, opened at Edinburgh Fringe in 2014 before transferring to the Bush Theatre and Folk Festival. His latest play, An Adventure, ran at the Bush in late 2018. His first piece for television, Murdered by My Father, won the Royal Television Society Award for Best Single Drama and was nominated for 3 BAFTAs. Vinay was named a BAFTA Breakthrough Brit for his work. He has since written for Paines Plough, ITV, Channel 4, and the BFI, as well as contributing to the best-selling collection of essays, The Good Immigrant. If you don't have that, buy it now. Most recently, Vinay wrote for the 11th and 12th series of Doctor Who, receiving a Hugo nomination, and is developing further projects for TV, theatre, and film. Welcome, Vinay. Sorry, I got a little tongue-tied at the end of that because there's just so much going on, right?
It's always horrible to hear that, but it sounded nice when you said it, so I'll take it.
Yay! That is amazing. Vinay, honestly, you are so spectacular and it's really amazing. But one thing does jump out at me though, like Doctor Who, like I know that their fan base is super intense. Did you feel a lot of pressure writing for Doctor Who? Like it's an institution, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, in a way I was slightly shielded from it because Chris, who hired me for it, he just wanted a lot of people. He wanted people who knew Doctor Who really well, but he also wanted people who didn't know it super well. And like, I love sci-fi, I always have, but Doctor Who was sort of that one that sort of fell in between, like when the old version and new version, I sort of fell a little bit in between it. So I didn't feel it as intensely at first. I certainly feel it now. Like, and you know, part of coming into that show was trying to, you know, you don't want to be disrespectful to, like, you have to forge your own path, but you don't want to be disrespectful to the fans or the show at all. So you want to make sure you know everything you can about it. And I personally wanted to understand what it was that the fans were interested in, or what they felt was wrong with the show, or things that they liked, or things that they'd like to see. Like, even if you don't end up using that, I'd liked considering and engaging with that, which is its own sort of madness, and I don't really necessarily recommend it. But for me, it was just a real useful gauge, especially like I was super aware that I think I was a junior writer on my intake of writers there. Like, I was very new to television. I went straight from Murdered by My Father, Doctor Who, which is a massive break, and I'm very lucky to have had it. It felt very intense. And then also like Mallory Blackman and me were the first writers of colour on that show ever.
Yes.
And that was, again, I hadn't quite, I suspected it, but I hadn't quite clocked it till like a little bit later. And then obviously that is its own pressure, in a way that you wouldn't want it to be, but it is. And now it's all fine. but it was hard. Like, those couple of years was like, you did really feel a real sense of, I've got to earn this because it means so much to lots of people. So I've got to, don't F this one up, basically. Not that you ever want to, but like, just definitely not.
Yeah, that's absolutely so important to talk about, I think, when you're entering those spaces and you're so mindful of the history of those places and those spaces, and then what does a safe environment mean? What does support look like? And how do you how can you find your own kind of support network? Did you have that?
Yeah, I mean, both in terms of a kind of story I could tell myself about that show. Like, the very first episode of Doctor Who was produced by a woman and directed by an Indian man, a gay Indian man, in fact. And so it was a thing of going, the show has a certain reputation now, but actually at the start it was already a show in which people who aren't the establishment effectively could find themselves. And partly I think because they thought it was going to be a failure. Do you know what I mean? They were like, oh, let's give it to those guys. And they absolutely smashed it. Which is great. And so like, I think, so that was a useful sort of anchor in my heart, a little bit, going, actually, this is where it sort of should have been all along, so it's fine. And then the support within was pretty good, actually. Like, it took, like, sometimes it's hard to explain. Like, so my episode was about the partition of India, which is not a small topic. And Doctor Who isn't made on like the biggest budget in the world, so I was doing most of research, like pretty much all the research. So I felt very anxious about that, and there were times when I was scared that there was no one checking. Do you know what I mean? There's no one checking your homework. Right. You really want someone to go, oh yeah, no, that's right, or that's not. And
fact check it, yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of wasn't there at first, but then I got to a point where I started expressing my anxiety about the fact that, that'll be, we'll go out on BBC One, that'll be a lot of people's first encounter with partition in this country. And so you want to get, again, you shouldn't feel the weight of everything being on your shoulders to get it right, but you want to get it as right as possible. And so to their credit, like when I sort of flagged it, they were better at engaging my anxiety as I was, because I think it's very easy when you don't feel necessarily beholden to a thing to go, oh yeah, it'll be fine. Like you'll get it. And it feels like trust, right? Mm-hmm. It seems like they're trusting you, but what that really is a sort of deferral of responsibility, and it always lands on your shoulders. And I think that happens innocently a lot of the time, and I was grateful that when I expressed that did sort of get picked up on, which I was very grateful for.
Yeah. But it's important to express it. It's important in that stage, even though, someone sort of gives you the kind of the space really to create. It's so important to ensure that you have that support, that dramaturgical support, research support. So let's talk about your first television drama, Murdered by My Father. Let's talk about this. Right. Because I remember when it came out, Vinay, it was everywhere. Everyone was talking about it. I mean, talk about success. But also, I think it was really successful because it highlighted a really important topic around honor killings. And I just wondered, in terms of how did this project come about? And what was your writing experience creating such a important, devastating, but also very highly sensitive subject matter?
Yeah, so I feel like I say this a lot to people, but I think the first thing to say about it is I didn't want to do it when it first came into my agent, which is how I got an approach from BBC Three. But there were a couple of things that made me feel a little bit better about considering it. One of them was the fact it came from the factual department. It was commissioned by the factual department, which means there's a lot of people who were committed to research, were committed to interview. Like when I came onto that project, there were loads of interviews and there was lots of research there already, and they already had an idea of kind of what that story should be. So that felt helpful. It didn't feel like I was getting thrown at something which was very sensitive, which is very hard to find a useful articulation of, especially when it feels like a sort of grab from the headline thing. Like the title was Always Murdered by My Father, and I found that really difficult because I was scared about what that would imply about the work. But actually, so the first thing that made me a little bit easier was the factual department commission. The second part of it was the producer was a woman called Aisha Raphael, who I owe an email to, actually, so I should use that. And Aisha is a very experienced producer. She's also a British Pakistani Muslim woman, and she knew people who worked with honor violence charities, and she was telling me about the genesis of that project wasn't, hey, there's that edgy, scary thing that those people over there do. It was, hey, these charities want a little bit more visibility on this and a little trying to get across to people kind of what this is, because there is a lot of misunderstanding. You have a lot of people deferring to and cultural sensitivity to not help lots of young women in particular. Mm-hmm. And so I felt like, okay, the heart of this project is in the right place. And that sort of starts checking your own ego, going, oh, I don't want to be associated, I don't want to do that. But actually, if this can be a piece of advocacy drama, there's something good that can happen from it. And the person at the very top of the power structure in terms of this, and that feels really important, is someone who cares about the same things I do and has the same concerns. Then you're like, okay, I feel like I can come to that project, and I feel like I can talk honestly about what I want to see and what I don't want to see. Because she had skin in the game. It mattered to her. It wasn't just a thing that she could do and then drop it. Like, it was really important to her as well. So that was great in a certain way. And then I was looking at that topic, and I was asking myself, what is it that you need drama for, right? You don't need drama to tell you that honor violence is bad. That is obvious. And the thing, I looked at it and I'm like, what don't I get about this? And the thing I didn't get is, why would anyone do that to their daughter, right? That was the thing. I couldn't get into the psychology of it. I couldn't get into anything of it. And it's hard to find those resources. And like a lot of the interviews and a lot of the research was interviews with survivors of violence or relatives of people who had been killed, which is all very useful and it was very important. But it also it revealed some things about that psychology, but not everything. And then I found a book by a journalist called I think it's Rania Husseini. It was about men and it had interviews with men who'd gone to prison, I think in Jordan and some other place, and then come out, and this fascinating insight. And some of them were, again, slightly ridiculous conversations, like a man trying to find a wife and he couldn't because they were worried that he would hurt their daughters, but him being profound. It's like, what's going on? It's like, well, it's really obvious, why those people are wary of you. And then some of them were quite profound, like people saying, I know my God wouldn't want me to do this, but I felt like I had to do it. And I was like, okay, if there's a way I can create a sense of empathy for that character in the first instance, not sympathy, empathy. And the reason I wanted to do that is because so often in those cases, the young women love their family. They see a thing again and again where they come back home after escaping. And that's the other part of it I couldn't get. And then suddenly you realize, oh, wait, there is a loving element. They do feel there is an element of connection and love there. So we had to have some degree of empathy for him so that we could feel him through her eyes. And in that way, we can create that more profound sense of betrayal. We can create a true drama that, again, isn't validating that person, but is sort of understanding the situation in which they're in, while still going, this is fundamentally about a weak man who privileges his situation in society over love for his family and his own kid. And that weakness of men is like, and then it becomes a domestic violence issue. It becomes a drama wider than just this specific set of people we're looking at here, and we can explore those themes more broadly. And I pitched it, sorry, and I'm going a bit, but like I pitched it as A View from the Bridge, like the Arthur Miller play, which is a play about a man who ends up, you know, screaming for his name in the street and wants his reputation, feels like it's been taken by this other person, and that causes him to break down to violence, even though he thinks of a man as a man of community and like helping others and stuff like that. And I was like, yes, like this is not an unfamiliar thing. Like this is deeply embedded in the world of drama, and we can speak to that drama while finding the specifics in this situation as well. So it was a long way around. It took a lot of time to get right, but I think we mostly got there.
Yeah, no, definitely. If you haven't seen it, please go and get your hands on that. It's such an important drama. And thank you for talking about that, because I think not many people talk about the process and the fact that as a writer, you know, as a creative, look, full stop, you're going to be propositioned to do many things, and you have to go through a set of questions. I really urge everybody to go through a set of questions to understand whether it's right for you or not. You know.
Yeah.
And also you have to really you know, just not rush the answer to say, you know, that urge that I think some people feel to say yes, especially when it's coming from a particular network or it's coming from a particular organization. I think that some people just see lights and they're like, right, yeah, then, you know, I'm never going to get this opportunity again. And actually just to sit back in that and just to take that time and to have those conversations is really, really important.
Yeah, and like and I think that I got hired on to Murder My Father in May 2015. We're shooting in September, October 2015, so it was very fast, and that was really hard. And you know, don't do that to yourself if you don't want to expose yourself, because it is a very hard. I think when you write something like that, you leave a little bit of yourself behind, and you should. Like the idea that you could do that easily would scare me. If anything, but like I think what's interesting, like the thing I think about quite a lot is, if that was being made now, I'm not the right writer for it, and I think I would hire someone else for it, and she should have. But like, and and that's the thing I am interested in like, in what scenario are you not the right person, which scenario are you the right person. And yeah, I mean, I as a baby, right, like that was my first bit of telly. I'd done my first play the year before. I think I maybe wasn't asking myself that question as fully as I should have. I just knew I didn't want to do it, and I was like quite compelled by what Aisha do it, and her trust in me was the thing that brought me on. But I think now I would think a bit harder about whether this is something that I should be doing, and I have the authority to create that and put that into the world, because there are some ways in which I have stakes in that story, but there are ways in which I don't. And you want that work, I think, if it has to exist, you want it to be, one, sitting in an ecosphere of other work that isn't around like honor violence. And I want, like, I feel like, so there's a whole other conversation, but I feel like there's not been enough work to sit around that work to make this feel like an aberration. You kind of want that story to be an aberration, lots of other things to be the norm.
Right.
And that would make me go, maybe I don't want to put that story into the world if I don't see elsewhere other stories with people who look like that in the world. Whereas like then I was like, well, I felt like there's some stuff coming through and this will sit within it. But I think I'd be a little bit more hesitant, actually, being honest.
Yeah, thank you so much. I mean, we could really delve into this.
Yeah, sorry, I know that was like
so much. No,
stuff,
don't apologize at all, because this is absolutely fantastic. But I'm going to just change it a little bit, change direction. You received, was it 3 BAFTA nominations, and then you got the BAFTA Breakthrough Brit award. Do you feel pressure? Do you feel any pressure after receiving awards or being nominated, or is it a form of motivation?
Yeah, I think there is a little bit of pressure, because that stuff came super early for me. Like I was like I said, my first proper play went on when I was 28, And then Murder went out when I was 30, and that BAFTA stuff was like when I was 30, 31, and I actually sort of squashed things a little bit. I was like, oh, like, what am I aiming for here? Like, if awards are your motivation, then like I'm sort of like, you know, I did, like, we won for Best Actor, which I was super, like, for me, that was a really validating thing, actually. And that was galvanizing. That did make me go, I want to do more like this, because I think the thing I love about writing for theatre in particular is creating roles for actors. And like Adil Akhtar is a phenomenal actor, and I felt like he wasn't getting a showcase for his talents in work, and like him winning that and like beating Benedict Cumberbatch. That's my favorite headline ever, which I have like framed somewhere. Like Adil Akhtar beats Benedict Cumberbatch in Best Actor. I was like, yes.
Right?
But it was that thing. So in that way, it was motivating, because it made me go, I want to write more stories for people who look like that. I want to give them complex and interesting roles.
Yes.
But like with the rest of it, it was a bit like, I still don't know what I'm doing. Like I want a chance. I want a chance to mess up. Actually,
Yes.
I want a chance to. This will sound like the tiniest violin in the world, I know, but it's like, man, I kind of wish I had a lot of more time to write lots of terrible things where I was just trying stuff out and not be super exposed. Whereas now, for good reason, you know, like if I do something like a theatre is going to be like, oh, that's like BAFTA nominated.
Yeah.
Or, right,
Everyone knows
like,
your name.
yeah, and in some way that's great, and if that can bring people to work, I'm obviously very grateful. I like to see bums on seats too, but it is also a bit like, it does make it a little bit harder on yourself to go, I can't screw this up, otherwise, like, I'm in trouble.
Yeah. Oh, I completely understand that. Definitely.
I think, I think I get it as well. Like it's almost, and I don't think it's the tiniest violin in the world. I think the comfort and the space to really kind of discover who you are and where you sit in like your journey, without the gaze of the entire world kind of chiming in, is a really lovely advantage, and one of the things that comes with youth. And it's a gift of youth, which is terrible because young people never really understand that they have that space to mess up. You know, that it's not the end.
It's interesting that, because I try and say to like both younger and new writers, you know, people who are moving into writing after maybe something else, and it sounds like one of those things that like slightly more experienced people always say, and it doesn't sound true, but it is so true, which is enjoy the anonymity, enjoy those early where you just get to play around and fill out those things. Because you can never get that back. Like you just never ever get the chance to. And my early like years in theatre, like doing scratch nights with mates, that was really exciting because you could be whoever you wanted every scratch night. Do you know what I mean? Every time you could reinvent yourself. You go, oh, I'm going to try write this thing, which is just no dialogue in it, or this one where there is only one scene, or this one where there's 100 scenes in 10 minutes. Like you could really push around the edges, and if it went wrong, it's fine. And if it didn't, then you're like, oh, you've learned something about myself that I might be excited to use in something else. But now it's like, if you take a big swing, people, their eyes are on you.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I'm sure you've had these conversations before, but part of the things that you want, the gift is not to necessarily just I am, a minority writer and I have like massive stage and stuff. You kind of want the gift to be able to be really terrible. Like you want to be able to like mess up and that not derail your career forever.
Yeah.
That's the grace that I really want for people, because that's how you'll get the most exciting work, is to be able to go for it.
Yeah, to really take those risks. I have to ask you though, Vinay, because this is my favorite question. All the listeners of the writing know this, and I will stand by this question until like I pop off. But who do you write for, Vinay?
Ooh, that's tricky. I think you have lots of audiences for a play. That's a cheap answer, but I think.
Bit of a cop out, no.
But look. I say this like, for me, if I don't know who I'm writing for or why I'm writing for, I find it really difficult to write a piece of work. So, sometimes that'll be that person will be me. Sometimes they'll be like, I just feel like I need to express this into the world. Although I do struggle with that a little bit, which is why I did find bringing myself to something like Murder by My Father or that Doctor Who episode about partition, when I can go, this is for me to go, I can show 7 million people Story of Partition, a thing that never engaged with otherwise. I'm excited to hit that audience. That feels really, really fun as a challenge. and then I feel like I'm changing. I feel like I'm creating the nexus of a wider conversation, and so I can let it feel. I think about audiences all the time. Like I understand when people go like, "Oh, I don't really think about audience or anything." I was like, "Man, they're paying £20 a ticket. You better think about your audience." You know what I mean? Like, and like again, I understand that that's someone trying to not put pressure on themselves, but I'm deeply fascinated by who comes to see my work. I'm really fascinated by what compels them. I'm fascinated by who needs it. Like the thing I try and tell again, writers who are just coming through, who I talk to, is that the play that you write will always be, for some person, that will be the play they've been waiting to see their whole life, or the thing they've needed their whole life. And you won't necessarily know that when you're writing it, but they'll be out there. And like for me, like I had that like with an adventure a lot. It was really funny watching like the audience shift from people who go to the theatre, and then because it's a 6-week run, and I think this is an interesting thing, that was enough time to build and find that audience who wouldn't necessarily come super early on. And like towards the end, there was like a guy in his 80s who looked a lot like my granddad, literally had the same sort of like suit, trying, you know, that very first generation immigrant man who's like, if I wear a slightly smart suit, they'll take me seriously. And that was a really important thing for them. Yeah. He's like, oh, I was going to see Antony and Cleopatra at the National. Like I met him in a matinee. He's like, I'm going to see Antony and Cleopatra at the National, but the tickets are too expensive. So I came and saw this. And he was like, oh, I just never thought I'd see my life on stage. He's like an 85-year-old man. Wow. And that for me was like massive. Do you know what I mean? I was like, how was I ever going to find that person? So in my head, I'm always writing for that person who I don't necessarily know, but who will love it. But you should also, like, I think you have to find something in it that is for yourself. Again, I know that's cheaty, but like I wrote, I just added a ridiculous song to a play to be played at the end of it, and it made me like chuckle to myself like a full 5 minutes, like picturing what that moment will be in an audience, and me just sort of going at the back. And you need that in your writing. It can't all be like, yes, I'm doing the very important work of, as much as I think that is important. You do need those bits of going, oh, that one's for me. That's me. Like.
So I want to ask you, Vinay, many writers I know that either have aspirations of writing for TV, film, or even theatre, depending on where they started, right? They always talk about trying to navigate the switch between all of those different mediums. How have you found it? How have you found that process?
I find it really hard, actually. I like being able to write across multiple mediums, because I think they all offer different things. There's something like really interesting that I noticed. So I was rewriting my first Doctor Who episode whilst I was also in rehearsals for an adventure, and I saw, when I spent a little bit too much time on the TV script, that method of writing came into the play a little bit. Like the scene started to feel a little bit more televisual in the way it was expressed. Even in my head, I was seeing it as a screen as opposed to the space. So I need a little bit of, and I've realized that now, and it takes me ages. So like I'm working on a play at the moment, and I've carved out, at first I was like, oh, I just need a week, I'll rewrite that. But actually I need a week to kind of get my head into it, and then another week is when I'll find the really good stuff, because I'll be thinking properly theatrically again for a while. But I know lots of people who are supple enough to switch between, but for me, like I find, especially I think I can switch into TV a bit more easily, because I didn't really grow up with theatre at all. Like I did grow up with like watching telly, obviously. So that feels a little bit more natural, whereas theatre still feels like I feel I need to like sit in it a little bit. I need to feel that moment, what it will look like, and that takes me a little bit well, but it is delightful. Like I really love it. And telly is it's like a proper machine sometimes, and it can be really bruising. And I think a lot of newer writers don't necessarily clock that fully. Like it sounds really exciting, but it is very intense and almost a completely different job. So, and theatre is inherently a slightly more humane world. And so it's nice to even just slip into that feeling of going, I can tell this person's going to be a bit late, and they'll probably be a bit more sympathetic, and it's not like production starting in 4 days and there's millions of pounds on the line.
What helps you though? What helps you to get back in? Is there something you tell yourself? What helps you to get back in? Sorry, I'm really going to push this.
No. So I will create like a little playlist for each play in particular I'm doing. Like again, because I can switch into telly quite easily, I have it for that as well, but I don't really need it. Whereas with plays, it's not even a fault. It'll just be like a couple of songs, and I'll listen to them on repeat. I did it with True Brits accidentally. I didn't even realize I was just writing, and I had the song stuck on repeat. And I realized when that song was playing, I was kind of in the mind. I had emotionally attached the play, the feelings to that song. So then it became a queuing thing of, if I listen to that song, suddenly I was like in that headspace again. And I have that for this play, like I'll just listen to it on repeat and then let those moments sort of drift through, and I'm like, oh, I'm here again. So it is, I find that a bit more of a shortcut. Helps me a lot.
I have to ask as well though, like with regards to representation on both mediums, like if you are in TV or in film, do you find that the struggle is particularly harder in which aspect? Like which one kind of?
They both have different challenges. Like I said, I think I was quite spoiled by Murdered by My Father in a way, in that to come into that, I'm the first person I encounter as a powerful executive in the television world is an Asian woman, South Asian woman. Like that's
huge.
Like that is super, yeah. And it's like, and it is relatively rare.
Yeah.
But it was also very important. Like it taught me, one, that's rare, but two, how important that is. I think, yeah, they're a different struggle. Like theatre annoys me in some ways about it, and like. And it's hard to be really real about those things sometimes, because you feel that it's such a small world that you feel like if you rub the wrong person up the wrong way, then you completely screwed it for everyone else, and you don't want to do that. Whereas like telly can be a little bit more anonymous, and you can kind of push things a little bit harder, and it's fine. I think television at the moment is probably, it saddens me to say it a little bit, but I would say particularly with like a lot of South Asian talent, like I found a lot of people I've like mentored or they found like an easier in to telly and jumping up into like the scale of that than they have found in theatre, which I'm trying to do something about. But like it does make me a tiny little bit sad. But I don't know, I'm still in that probably slightly naive place of going, oh, I feel like I can do something about it. Like whatever what I'm doing, I'm like trying to make sure I am not letting that sit to the side. Yeah, sorry, that's a very long rambling. Like, there's so many minute little things. Like,
no, example, I know it's such a tricky question, because you're right. There's so much in it.
Yeah, and like I'll tell like a tiny example, right? So like on Doctor Who, like I'd written this character who was like a 45-year-old like South Asian guy, and they were like, oh, that's a really hard bracket to cast for. I was like, what? And they're like, oh, we feel like there's like only these few people, and they're always got jobs. And I was like, there's so much.
I hear that all the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's like so much. I was like, and you're like, wait a minute, I can't write that character because you're telling me you can't, like a middle-aged dude. Like, come on. Like, I mean, I do get it. I can kind of believe it to a degree, but I'm also like, but are you really actually trying that hard? And that is a classic thing with casting. I think that is changing with casting actually in a really brilliant way. But it was like a thing. I was like, I can't believe. It was like, look, get one of my uncles. Like, there's so many of them.
Hey, people.
Yeah, it can't. You can't be telling me that this is true. Like, I just don't believe it. So, like, again, those things you don't expect. And like with True Brits, the thing that really, like, I found really frustrating and weird was like, when True Brits, like, you get told all the time, write the thing that's most important to you, right?
Yeah.
What you don't understand when people tell you that is the thing that's most important to you won't necessarily be the most important thing to a certain critical body.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
True.
So your life is the most important thing to you, or the things you're writing about, the most important thing to you. For them, it's curiosity. And it's hard to place your heart and your hopes and your ambitions into a place of an anthropological place, going, oh yeah, that's fine. That's what they're doing over there. You know, I remember very clearly walking through the National when I was just sort of starting out, and like just hearing a couple going, oh, are we going to see the Indian play or the gay play? And I was like, holy shit. Like, but you just know that like again, I think criticism is changing in a useful way, but like at that point, it was like you just know that's in their head. They're like, oh, I guess I'm going to go see that. That's the way in which it's framed, and that was really hard. I was sort of like, it was really like, it was a kind of proud / horrible moment. The person who least like an adventure was an Asian woman, and I was like, I guess that's what progress is. Is like people don't. It's about,
I guess that's what progress is. That's what he looks like, right?
It's a bit like, it was really interesting. What I found really fun in a way is like the things that she wanted from it were very specific things that only someone with that background could want, right?
Right.
And the play wasn't trying to do what she wanted, which I'm like happy, I'm fine with that. But I found it really interesting that actually it swung the other way. Like the thing that they wanted was something super specific, but the place it came from was from a place of ultimately going, that story is really interesting and really important. I want to see that. Like so that's what I mean. Like there's always so many little things that you just don't expect or you don't understand, and then it becomes clear afterwards. But like going into it, like those challenges, are different all over the shop.
But so let's talk about like your research and development process. So what I love to hear about, because I'm a sucker for documentaries and autobiographies and things of that nature. But in terms of the unexpected, you know what I mean? Like, so when you go and embark on any projects that you've written, have there been any unexpected things that have taken place through that research development process of any of your work?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like big unexpected and small unexpected. Like, so I'm writing an adaptation of The Cherry Orchard right now, and so as part of that, I read Anton Chekhov's letters. Not a thing I would have done, like casually, like. I was like, I don't care. But reading it, I was like, this is a funny dude. Like he is so like he's really, really funny. Like genuinely like 21st century feeling funny and very compassionate and really cares. And like he's a doctor who also wrote, and that gives his charge and the way he looks at the world and interest and the compassion he has a very different element. And his travel logs and stuff are brilliant. I would never I was doing it out of a sort of due diligence thing, going, I'm going to completely rewrite his play. I kind of want to get the heart of who the guy was. I was like, oh wow, I love this is wonderful. So you have those little surprises, those connections that you never expected. You have other bits like other stories which are you're like, oh, that's really fascinating, and then you struggle with yourself like how that fits within the work. Like I'll give you an example. Like Murdered by My Father ends with the man, after he has done the horrible thing that he does to his kid, he throws himself off this balcony, and it's very like Greek tragedy. It's very, a guy can't live with what he's done, and so he'll do that. I would never have made that up, right? I would have felt like that was too big a thing. That came from a real life story. That was a guy who, in fact, he survived that, right. And he went into court, and he was like, at first he was like, oh, it was it was Al-Qaeda came for me, and they pushed me. And then he was like, I've done a horrible thing, give me the death penalty. And it was like, it just completely like, because and it was which is as a writer, you see that it's like, that's a startling thing. Yes, that does belong there. That's really interesting. But we had a conversation with like the honor violence charities, and they were like, yes, but like for the most part, a lot of these guys will go to prison and come out and they'll be very proud of what they've done, right? And they'll be very lauded what they've done sometimes. And so it comes to the decision there of going, well, this is a true story in terms of the research, but in terms of other thing that you're trying to represent, in the majority of cases, is not the case. So do I want to go for the average truth, or do I want to go for a startling truth? And what do both of those things do to that story, and what do they mean for people? In the end, like I got to a point where I'd read enough of that research, and it was really harrowing, and I immersed myself in it fully, to be able to write back to them and go, look, it's a BBC Three commission, like, first of all, so that will be hitting young audiences first, and then go out into the world. The thing I kind of want to plant in the minds of like anyone sees it is like, if you do this, it will haunt you forever. The wider truth is, obviously, most people don't think that, but if you're going to, like, who knows if someone who might do something horrific to their kid will see it, But if they do, the thing you want to leave them with is, this is going to sit with you. And even if that like changes one person's life, that matters. But it was hard, because you're like, this is true, but how, for who, like how much true, how is it true? And then there's also like little things, there's like really inconvenient things that completely derail your projects. which is like, because you come, like, I think if you're doing anything like historical or thing with a lot of research, you come into it with a set of assumptions about what you think that story is. And sometimes you have like delightful, interesting surprises, and you deepen your knowledge of it. Like I learned a lot about Mau Kenya studying adventure, some of which I knew, some of it I'd assumed, some of it I saw in a new light. You know, like stuff like the colonial secretary at the time was one Oliver Littleton, who the national stage is named after, which became an in-joke in that play. So, you know, those little discoveries. But then there are other things where like, oh, that whole plot line, which was like beautifully put together and emotionally wrenching. I was like, I'm a damn good writer. This is so cool. And then you read things like, oh, it's completely not true. Like, that is like, there's something someone absolutely lied to you about, and you have to go, I can't do it. Like I can't, especially with that, because again, with that play, I was like, actually, this will be someone's first encounter with that story, or a lot of people's first encounter with that story. In this particular case, I can't put it in, because I know it would upset me to have it there. So yeah, it swings all over the place, but mostly it's the delightful ones.
I love that. Oh my God, Saru, I know we're going to have to really push through some of these questions, because we need to get to the next round about that. But I do want to, if I may, Saru, I'm going to just jump in. Can I just jump in real quick? Because I really want you to talk about True Brits, and we can't leave here without you talking about True Brits. Can you just tell us like how much of that was your own personal story, and how much of it was just the experiences of those around you? Yeah,
so True Brits came from a few places. The first place, like very bluntly, was like the very, very, very first play I wrote was had like 9 characters for 40 years, would involve 3 massive scene changes. This is before anyone tells you what theatre actually is, right? So like, yeah, cool. I've heard it's that medium, you can do anything. Brilliant. It's about, and it was about how London had changed from like the 80s to, especially in terms of property, and like how it got smaller and smaller, and what that meant, and who had inhabited those spaces, and how they were called or not. And like I think like there were a lot of plays like that. But at that time, I was like, this is great. This is brilliant. Like, starting work of massive genius. And then True Brits is a one-man play with a guy who could have been played by me if I if I learned to act, because I was like, I got no money, but I want to write a play. So how am I going to make this happen? So I'm going to write a one-person play. And there were a lot of monologue plays knocking around at that time, so it felt like a natural, like a lot of my peers were doing it. So I was like, okay, I like it as a form. I'm interested in the way you can be deceptive as a narrator to an audience. Not like that interests me. And so, and then so there was financial issues. There were like formal things I was interested in. And then at the heart of it was me looking at the Olympics, and that being like a very woozy few weeks, and going, oh, I really love my city then. And I had a real like, oh, it feels like there's a vision of what this country could be in it, which, you know, again is so much untruth, but at the moment you feel it, right? Yeah. And I sat that next to what it felt like to be like 7/7 changed my life, because I went from being a teenager who was like arguing with their parents, grandparents. Like I grew up in a suburb of Southeast London called Bexley. It's like a very white area. You know, Stephen Lawrence moved down the road from where we are. I didn't realize until like my dad sent me to kickboxing lessons when I was 8. And I thought that was really cool. I didn't realize that's because they were scared that I was going to get killed, right? So that had been sitting on the undercurrent to but I hadn't been conscious of it fully. Like, you know, I'd still been called like a Paki when I was like 8 years old by a National Front member, because the BNP bookshop was in Welling down the road. Like, all those things were sort of around. But I felt very, like, sort of like the rebellion in me was to go, no, like, this country can be fine. This will be a place for us. Like, you guys are just overly concerned or scared. Like, we can, you know, that change is going to come. It's going to be brilliant. And I wanted to believe that so fully. And then what 7/7 did was very, very quickly realize, oh, your entire place in this country is entirely contingent on like what other people think of you. And there's nothing you can do about that. There's absolutely nothing you can do about that. And what I wanted to do was go, how I wanted to show those two Londons, that very paranoid, very fearful London, a very jubilant, multicultural. If you're listening to this, not saying I'm just doing bunny quotes there, London, and go, which one of these is the truest sense of what the city is, and obviously, and then run that conflict through that character, and obviously it's like a little bit of both, but at the start of it, like it starts off as this, like I deliberately had this character who was trying to be very charming, very disarming. He has a slightly middle-class accent. Like he's trying to be very, very welcoming to a theatre, a classic theatre audience. And he's telling you things like, things are really bad, but now they're going to be fine. They're fine now. Like, look at this, it's really wonderful. And that's the thing people really want to hear, right? That's the thing people really want to hear. And then you come back to him as a youth and he's got a different voice. And he's sort of like squabbling around in South East London, getting beaten up by racists and falling in love and doing all the childish things. And you realize hopefully, if you've done it right, his position of acceptance isn't just, oh yeah, I'm here, I love it. It's, I've changed my voice because that's makes it easier for people to kind of accept me. And I'm saying these things because I know it makes you as an audience feel a little bit more, like I was trying not to flag it hugely, but I was like, oh, this is the interesting thing you can do. And then it became an exercise of, he's telling that dark joke which you're allowed to laugh along with because he's telling it. And he's telling that joke and you're laughing, and then your point is like, where is this not funny anymore? And then that's the point, hopefully an audience realizes people tell those sort of jokes as a defensive mechanism to go, I need to laugh this off because otherwise the horror of it will sit with me really fully. And so basically try to do all that in a 60-minute show.
You did all that in a 60-minute show. It's absolutely brilliant, Vinay. It's so powerful. Definitely one of my favorite plays. And I think there's so much that we can that just resonates in such a deep way.
And sorry, it's like very quick because I think it's like I took that to Edinburgh and I found it, that's the first time I'd gone to Edinburgh. I'd run a marathon in Edinburgh before I put a play there or gone to see it. Like it just felt really weird. But what's so fascinating to me about it was like I love the idea of putting a role that kids could take to drama school auditions, just like, and like I feel a little bit of a glow in me whenever someone tells me, oh, that's my audition monologue for, because they're like, but then the other bit, like the people who most loved that play in Edinburgh were a group of Black American students who were putting on a play about a lynching in a university town. And they came along and they absolutely loved it. And we had such an amazing conversation about code switch, like all these things that I wasn't really having a conversation with anyone else, and that level of support, but also to go, hey, this is about a very specific thing, but also those guys' contexts are completely divorced from mine, and there was something in it that they can see. So actually, if I was going, oh, that like these middle-aged old white critics don't get it, it's like that's just them not wanting to, because there is obviously ways in which that can cross over to context completely beyond itself. So it was a real lesson to me of going, oh, I can make that role for someone. I loved seeing that guy. I love seeing Sid's face on that poster going, it's a brown man's face on a poster in Edinburgh that isn't the browned up Siddhartha musical, which was a thing then. And also I got to have that conversation with those students and see their brilliant play because I got to tell my truth. And that was such a powerful lesson for me. And like has driven everything. That's why when I came to Murdered by Father, it's like, I'm going to create an amazing role for that character. I'm going to create an amazing role. Like that stuff matters. And sorry, that
definitely. That's why I had to include it in the monologue anthology that I put together as well.
Yes,
it's just such a fantastic play. So definitely read it, buy it if you haven't bought it already, and get your hands on that and read True Brits as well as all of Vinay's work.
Definitely. Ooh, next phase.
Should we move on this? Look, so many questions that we need to ask you through. Is it okay to move on, or did you want to ask one more question?
We definitely can move on.
We had so many questions for you, Vinay.
Do come back to us, Vinay, because we always want to have these. We love these conversations and we enjoy them so much, and we always want them to keep going.
Yeah, sure, be happy to. Yeah,
cannot.
So we're going to move on to the next section. Saru, do you want to just introduce it?
Yes. So basically, for every single person who, every single writer, wonderful writer who comes into our writers' room, we always ask them if they can prepare or at least let us know of 3 plays that they wish they could have read before entering the professional industry. I mean, we're not evil with this, like we're quite flexible. It doesn't have, you could have maybe come across it beforehand, but generally it is anything that inspired them or does inspire them to date.
Yeah.
What are your plays, Vinay?
Yeah. So my play, like, it's, I guess, I don't know if it's cheating, but like one of them is definitely after I entered the industry. But like the way I took the question was to go, before I came anywhere near theatre in particular, what are those plays that would have given me a jump or a confidence?
Exactly.
That is exactly how to
Yeah,
take it.
that are written by Black, Asian, POC writers.
Yeah. So my first one is Roy Williams' Sing Your Heart Out for the Lads, which I'm sure you get a lot, but the reason I really loved that play was for a couple of reasons. One, it felt like it reflected a part of London that I understood very intimately. Like Roy studied at Rose Bruford, which is Sidcup, which is where I was born. And so like there was something in that where I was like, oh, like the circumstances of the play are not very pleasant, but it is also very familiar. And what I adored about it is it's what, like, once it's talking about issues that I'm really interested in, concerned about via football, which I super love. But it's a super muscular play. Like, it's, as a piece of craft, it's astonishing. It's very well crafted. And I think it was the first time I had really clocked that in a play. I was like, man, like this feels meaty, like this feels really, really muscular. And that is like inspiring as a writer. It's like, wow, you know, craft matters, like the things you could, it pushes through at once. But also it just, it was kind of everything I wanted to do. It was like, oh, that's what theatre to do. Because what Roy was so good at with that play was he didn't take the easy out. He gave really good articulation and really good arguments to a racist white character. Right? It didn't soft serve it. It was like, actually, the reality of the thing that you're fighting is people who are this good at creating these coalitions and talking about and twisting things, and they become seductive and like, you know, there are people who create movements, and like, I think you see that like years down the line after that play was written. And I was looking at that, I was like, yes, this is actually the racism as I understand it, as I grew up with and seen, which I think a lot of people had underserved, you know, which sounds a weird thing to say, but I was like, that is the truth of it. And by going there and going, here are the best arguments that person will give you, you actually ask more of your characters who are pushing against that and asking more of your audience they bring in. And so I really appreciated that as a challenge as well as a piece of craft. So, and then my next play is Hannah Coyle's Scenes from 68 Years. Hannah is an Irish-Palestinian writer, and what I really love about Scenes is it's got a like, even the title is formally interesting, right? It's got an asterisk by the 68 because it's talking about the occupation of Palestine, and that number goes up because it continues, right? And which, like, even as a little thing, like, it's a small gesture, but super meaningful and like really playful as well. And that reflects the play itself. Like, it's these sketches, like it is these scenes across time and situations, and they build this incredible kaleidoscopic understanding of a situation, which I think can be really hard. Like, I think a lot of the new writers try and go, I must tell everything in this story about that thing I'm trying to talk about through this one character, through their journey, and you really push to encourage that. Actually, what that play does so brilliantly is it creates a better understanding of the situation, both in like the big stuff, but also the minutiae of everyday life through lots of different people's experiences and understandings of it. And you come away from it going, oh, the totality of the emotional oppression there is more than just like the very obvious terror there. It is also like you having a picnic with your friends and how that is slightly different there, and that is more challenge. But also in the way that people push back on that, and like the resistance there, and like the hope and the playful and the jokes and the cheekiness. Like, it's not theatre of oppression or pain necessarily. Like, it finds the fact that we all find the humanity and joy even under the worst circumstances. So it's very clear-eyed, it's very compassionate. It does a thing with form that completely creates the thing that the writer wants to make, and it is different from a traditional, hero story narrative. So I would have found that, I think younger and you and me would have gone, that is a different dramaturgical shape for a play, and you can do that, and it can be brilliant.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
And then finally, sorry, so my final play is a play called Blood by Hugo Paines, and the reason I mention this is because it was a play I didn't know until they did 3 readings of South Asian plays at the Royal Court a few years ago. And part of the reason for doing that was going, there's all this work here that we don't really know the legacy of. And for me, when I came into playwriting, I didn't know any South Asian work at all. Like I didn't know, apart from like East is East, which everyone knew. So the one piece of like canonical South Asian, but it's all, but like the weight of that play is a terrible weight in a way, because it's like going, well, what else can you name? And if you can't name anything else, that's bad. And so, and that event I found really interesting. So it was these 3 readings, and this was a play that had like slightly similar stuff to Adventure, but like was written in 1989 and it did encompass bits of partition. It did encompass what it meant to be a first generation immigrant, but it was also had like slightly surreal things in there as well. It was it wasn't like, I think you can get a lot of those stories get wrapped up in straight naturalism because people are scared of letting them go elsewhere. It was very much its own thing. It was really exciting. It drifted into an epic territory. Like it claimed that space and it claimed the size of the narrative, and I'd never heard of it.
I've never heard of that play.
Right, exactly. So that's what I mean. Like, and it struck me.
I've literally just Googled it. So I'm like,
no, and what? Like, and you know, and that was, you know, only a couple of years before that, like a writer called Parth Bansal, who died unfortunately. Yeah, but it was like, I was interested and I didn't know anything about that. And the thing that terrifies me is going, we have to reinvent the wheel every generation, and that can't be a thing that happen, because you don't have to. You don't have to feel that. Like when I started out, Jatinder Verma, who was the AD of Tara Arts Time, literally sat me down. He sent a message to my agent, sat me down, and told me, like with old beard stroking thing in a half demolished Tara, like the legacy of British Asian theatre in this country. I was super grateful for that, because I just hadn't. Again, I grew up in a place that didn't really have any theatre. I wasn't doing theatre when I was younger, really. I didn't know how access to it, and I didn't know that legacy at all. So when I went to those readings, part of me was like, thank God I get to hear about these things, and wow, that was a stunning play. Why don't I know about it? And then that slight sadness in you going, well, I don't know. If I don't know about it,
who does?
Like who does? And that's, you know, that's an ignorance on my part, but I want to be able to go. Part of the thing I'm really interested in is reaching, you know, backwards to people and going, hey, these are really great things and we should be able to connect these to here, and then I can hopefully be a conduit to people who are coming through after me, so that they don't feel like they're reinventing it, and they can, you know, not that they feel that stuff as a burden, but to go, hey, these people are doing that, and that's exciting. You're part of a legacy. That's really exciting. Like, you don't have to feel like you are, it's you against the world. Like people did that before, and like, don't let it slip again, basically.
Exactly, and that's exactly why we do what we do at Beyond the Canon. Exactly. It's exactly the same thing. But you're so right, and that's why it's lovely. It's so great and important to have these conversations, because, you know, we added this section, you know, in the podcast, because we wanted to pay homage to others, and we also know that we are forever students.
Yes,
we're forever learning, and actually, the way that we ensure that the next generation are more equipped than we were who were coming in, is to talk, is to share, is to be transparent, is to say, look, these are the plays that we have in our home libraries. Do you know of these plays? You know, and then let's find a way to ensure that you also have those plays that are accessible to you, you know. So and I'm so happy to hear that, you know, obviously this is happening. There's so many people that are doing the same thing, and it's such a joy, because you're so right. I mean, I had to go and sit and find and ask people, do you have that play? Is it underneath your head, or is it, you know, because, and luckily enough, people still had them. They had them from like productions that took place in the 70s and 80s. You know, when people are talking about archiving, you know.
No, not at all. And like, and that can be the really tricky. Like, it's made me really obsessed with it. Like, whenever I find a clip of anything, like I'll find like a YouTube downloader and go, I need that. Like, that's for my like personal archive. That one thing.
Yeah, I think we're very lucky to be like at this age. It's really lovely, this information age that we're living on. Like this digital space that we're creating, these conversations. That this conversation is going to be incredibly difficult to wipe out. Like the one we're having right now. It exists now. It's somewhere where people can easily access it. They will know about this just simply from this conversation having taken place. And I think that's a really, really lovely privilege. And, you know, we're talking as well with regards to like the work that Sim did with Kwame when they were searching under beds and whatever. Yeah. That is now digitalized and people are able to find it. And I think we just have to keep creating platforms such as these, keep having conversations such as these, keep putting it down in a medium that is so hard to rub out, and then just keep taking it forward. I'm excited for the knowledge base. I definitely don't feel like I'm starting from scratch. I feel very privileged to have so many places where information can come at me, and it might take a little bit more work to find, but to find it I can, you know. And it's not as much work as is it in your attic. So I think it's really amazing.
Definitely. So we're going to go to we're doing the final round with you now, Vinay, right? This is going to be the speed round. So you can't take liberties no more, Vinay, with our time, okay?
To the high heavens. Now you get one word or one.
That's right. So you have, this is what we're calling our lightning round. Okay, so we're going to ask you some questions. And like Saru just said, you can only answer them as a one word or one sentence answer.
Okay.
And what else do you need to know? I think that's about it, really. And 10 seconds, please. If you can answer them within 10 seconds.
I'm so bad at stuff like this. Okay, I'll try.
All the writers swearing it. They're like, no, they made me do this.
That's why we do this job, is so we can sit there, be terrible, come back to it an hour later and be good. Like, but let's do it. That's right.
All right. That's the spirit. Yes, we're going to do it. Okay,
you ready?
Okay.
See, can I hold my cat while I do this? Sorry.
Yes.
You can hold them. Okay, bring the cat in. Look,
the cat is gonna help.
Really polite right now. I'm surprised they haven't made an appearance.
Okay.
All right. Question number 1. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. The first question is, what do you like to do in your spare time?
Like hang out with my cat right now. Like, there's nothing else.
Okay, the best play or drama you've ever written?
Oh, cool. An adventure. Actually, can I change that?
Go on, quickly.
Sorry. The best play I've ever written is the one I'm writing right now.
Okay. If you could tell your younger self something, what would it be?
You belong here.
Oh,
nice. Love that.
Yeah, that's one.
What character in any of your plays do you relate to the most?
George Lucas in my Star Wars play I'm writing.
That, by the way.
I'll have to contextualize that after this, but like I'm saying that for you now.
Okay. There's so many questions. Okay. What is the best money you ever spent as a writer?
Ooh, best money I ever spent. Oh God. A timer, buying a Pomodoro timer. So it's like a 25-minute timer and 5 minutes. It's just a physical one, not on my phone, just something.
Okay, you're stretching that one sentence.
Sorry, because people don't know what it is. Sorry.
Favorite actor and director?
Oh no. Andrew Arnold's my favorite director because she inspired me to get into the world of this. Actor. I'm going to say Angela, who was in Adventure. She's gorgeous. I want to do everything. Okay. Angela the Sun.
What one thing makes for a good story?
Compassion.
If you could choose a writer to co-write with, who would you choose?
No. Bruce Norris.
Name 2 of the greatest South Asian playwrights of all time.
Parth Bansal and respect to Tanika Gupta, because she's on the curriculum. That's when you know you're good.
Name 2 of the best films and plays written by a Black, Asian, or POC writer.
I'm gonna say, because it's had 7 BAFTA nominations today, Rocks by Teresa Rococo.
Yes, right.
Which is stunning from the very moment I saw it. And is it two by... Do you know what? I'm going to say this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to say the film of that. Just because it mattered for a whole generation of young writers coming through.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Mm, very fair.
As much as I have issues. But anyway.
Usually how it goes. What TV are you absolutely obsessed with right now?
Obsessed with?
Yeah.
The Good Lord Bird, which no one has heard of.
No.
The good okay, again, very quick. So Good Lord Bird is about a guy called John Pratt. So it's essentially trying to do a dark comedy about pre-Civil War Southern America, and it's from like a novel, but it is like, how do you find that darkness there? What is it? Because it's only because I'm writing. I know I'm sort of explaining this as cheating, but it's like I'm writing.
You are really cheating now.
Sorry, like, bear with me. History is, the feelings around history are different than what we expect them to, and they're the first things that we lose. And they're always as unexpected, and this is what the research say, like they're more expected than you ever think. I'm writing a dark comedy about the history of the East India Company and like the absurd cruelty and the normality of that. And that's how people related to it. And you have to understand that to get how those things happened. Little Bird is a dark comedy about a guy who believes he's sent from God to free the slaves, and he's like just gunning everyone down, and he's essentially the guy who helps start the Civil War. And it is like such an insane way of making that story happen. And it's from a novel, and it is like, I was really like, I came to it, I was like, I'm not sure about this. The novel is written by a Black man. It is directed by really interesting directors who obviously really care about it. And I'm like, this doesn't fully work, but like the thing it's doing is absolutely fascinating, because within the strangeness there is a truth.
I can't with how many sentences that was.
Sorry, I know. It's because it's just, I know, but it's just like.
Vinay!
I wouldn't do it right now.
I'm glad you shared that, because I never heard that. I've never heard that.
It's not like I'm obsessed with it in a way of going, this is super flawed but super interesting at once, and yeah, I find that fascinating.
Okay, so last one, Vinay. This is it. What is the last play that you've read, or what was the last play that you read?
Oh, this shouldn't take me so long. What was the last play?
You just don't read other people's plays, like you just.
I just read my own. No, because it's only because like the boring answer is like I reread The Cherry Orchard by play. But I'm trying to think what I read before that.
Right.
Oh, the last play This is a slightly cheesy answer. The last play I read was a brilliant work in progress by someone I mentor. I don't know if they'd let me tell you what it is.
Okay.
It was very exciting.
Plus also, you have one sentence.
Vinay, thank you so much. You survived it. You survived the lightning round.
I did cheat.
You broke all the rules.
I started well. I think I started well, and then I sort of like.
No. People like, honestly, writers have done worse than you have. Like you.
Don't name off the hook, Saru. No, you terribly.
I am low key quite proud of you, because I always expect very little from you writers.
That is exactly the mindset that we want, people. if you create the low bar, we'll always jump over it. So that's so everyone wins. Yeah.
Everyone wins.
Vinay,
Thank you so much, Vinay. It's been absolutely,
thank you for having me.
absolute pleasure to have you. Please come back again.
I'd love to.
All the very best with all of your projects that you're working on right now.
Thanks.
Can't wait to see them unfold.
Yes.
Fingers crossed. Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Bye.